Okay, everyone, to an episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. I have a really cool comparison for you guys from the brand Seiko. A little about them. They were founded back in 1881. They are an iconic Japanese brand that cover all market segments from entry level to high end. And we do have a bit of a spread in terms of the range here today for you guys. But this is going to be a lot of fun because we're looking at two different GMTs, and they're two different types of GMTs, and they're on kind of different ends of the spectrum, but of course are both essentially Seikos at heart. We have a Grand Seiko and a Seiko Prospex model. Now, pricing wise, there's quite a divide. The Prospex model is going to be a $1,700 MSRP, whereas the Grand Seiko is going to be a $6,100 MSRP. Also, some key differences are going to be the fact that one has a 4 hertz movement and the other has a 3 hertz movement. Also, one of the GMTs is going to be an office style or a collar style GMT, while the other is going to be a traveler's or a true style GMT or a Flyer GMT as well, in terms of what they're known as. But I think these are two really great high value options within either space. Now, in terms of the Grand Seiko, I do think it is worth the money. And I think there's not a lot of people that really argue that at this point, whereas there are a lot of folks that haven't been thrilled with Seiko in terms of their value proposition. But I do think that this Prospex model, the SPB519, which is the international nomenclature, or the SBEJ029, which is kind of the Marine Master Junior GMT. I think this is an amazing value, especially when you consider you can get it from Sakura watches for about $1,200, which is nice. Similarly, great deal for this GMT, the SBGM245, that goes for $6,100. You can get them for $4,489 from Sakura. So pretty good deals there. I actually sourced both of these watches through Sakura, just, a long time apart, because I've had this Grand Seiko GMT for quite some time now. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead, zoom the camera out, get these pieces in hand, and take a closer look. Okay, now when I mention kind of different ends of the spectrum, I will say that this Seiko Prospex feels quite grand. It has a lot of the design grammar that you would get within a Grand Seiko, whereas this Grand Seiko honestly has a lot of Seiko design grammar in it in terms of the way that it looks and feels, being more on the sporty side, of course, and actually being a bit less faceted and more organic and round and just beautifully curvaceous and sculpted, whereas here you're going to get more of those flat angles and facets that have become really signature with Grand Seiko, and just overall with Seiko, of course, in some of their more high-end products that do feel more expensive. Also, they both do have, the red accents, the play off of blue there, except here we have a white dial, which I think looks really gorgeous. And then here we have the blue dial, of course, surrounded by that steel bezel versus the ceramic blue bezel that you have here. So I think aesthetically, if you had either one of these, they could definitely do the job. But for me, being an owner of both, I will say that, the nice thing is, again, there's quite a bit of crossover. But I adore both of these watches. But first, let's start off with some of the basics. 42 millimeters in diameter here, 13.4 millimeters thick, and 48.4 millimeters lug to lug in terms of the length. Now, looking at this Grand Seiko, you're going to have 40.3 millimeters in diameter, 14.5 millimeters thick, and then 48.5 millimeters in terms of that lug to lug width. So very nice. Also, you're going to get pierced lugs, so nicely drilled, which means you're going to be able to swap out bracelets quite easily with either one of these, and both of them do have 20 millimeter lugs, so again, quite versatile, and again, quite a bit in common. Also, you're going to see that beautiful 4 o'clock crown, which is exactly at 4 o'clock, which also does align beautifully with that date window. And then here you're going to see it's slightly above the 4 o'clock. So not quite aligned, but still the date window is quite nicely integrated. In this case, it stands out a bit more thanks to the extra framing there. But here it's definitely meant to be a little bit more low key. So you do have, of course, your SBGM245, and I love this watch. It was actually my first quote-unquote luxury wristwatch purchase, and I have to say I've never regretted that, and I wear this watch a whole lot. But this one kind of came out of nowhere. I wasn't asking for it. I wasn't waiting for it, but when it arrived, I had to have it, and I had to share it with you guys because I love this combo of the white dial with the blue bezel, the red accents. It all just comes together really nicely, and also it does have their new toolless ratcheting dive suit extension clasp. But one of the nice things that I love about this particular watch is it also does have a special clasp. It actually has manual micro adjustments, whereas most Grand Seikos don't even have that. So some of you are like, oh man, there's no on the fly. Guys, they're not clasp makers. Although they do make their own clasps, it's just wild how much stock people have put into on the fly micro adjustment. I mean, it is cool, but it is far from a deal breaker. People who are like missing out on watches that are this good based on a clasp, it's wild, especially considering that it's 20mm lug and you could put this on any other strap. And if you are that big on bracelet, this absolutely does the job. And I'm completely fine with that. This, honestly, doesn't do a great job for manual micro adjustment because it is absolutely meant to be a toolless ratcheting dive suit extension. It's not meant to really be the key point of micro adjustments. But yeah, so I digress there. I just, I read the comments, I see them coming. I know what some people are thinking, but I will say that, yeah, these two watches are quite outstanding at either ends of the spectrum. They both even have 3 full day power reserves at 72 full hours. It's just one is going to be that higher beat at 4 hertz, whereas the other one's going to be the lower beat at 3 hertz. Of course, one's going to have applied indices, one's going to have raised indices, one's going to have, accenting there and somewhat compound and complex finishes on the handsets and dial furniture, and the other one is going to have crazy facets, beautiful bevels, satin hairline brushing. So there's a lot more, of course, going on at a much higher level with this Seiko, but there should be for the price, right? I should say Seiko, Grand Seiko versus Seiko. At the price difference, you should expect there to be a quality difference, and there absolutely is. But I will say, to the naked eye, to most non-enthusiasts, this is borderline the nicest it can be, while you can still appreciate the difference. A lot of people, if it gets any nicer than this, such as something like this, your casual watch fan may not even appreciate or notice the different levels of complex finishing. So is definitely something to consider. But with that said, let's actually get these both on wrist and see how they wear. Okay guys, as you can see on my 7.5 inch wrist, or 19 centimeters in circumference wrist, it looks quite nice. Of course, if you get my wrist a bit too close to the camera lens, you're going to notice that the watch appears much larger than it actually is. But if I keep my wrist nice and low, it is all of a sudden more centered, and you're seeing the sides of the bracelet more. Now, comparatively on this side, again, very, very wearable, but similar kind of distortion there. So what I'll do is keep my wrist nice and low, and then just tighten up the frame here so that you guys can see still a detailed look, but just add a bit of a true aspect ratio as to how this may lay on your own wrist. And of course, guys, I have done full reviews of both of these timepieces on the channel. So if you're going to want the full details, where we're breaking down, some more of the movement details and getting into, again, some of the finer points here, yeah, just stay tuned for those. I'll try to leave links down either in the description or at the end of the video as like a recommended viewing. But man, this is a gorgeous watch. Yes, it does have a Seiko silhouette, but this thing is done to such a high level. Look at the handset here, guys. Ooh, the faceting. It is absolutely special. Now, this is no slouch. And again, for your average consumer, this is about as nice as you can finish a watch to where somebody can appreciate the difference between this and something that's going to be a little bit, I would say, less impressive, right? Like, this will impress folks who don't even care about watches. They might not be impressed by the brand name, but there's plenty of people that are, because this is a hobby of obsession. So, even love to hate them. I mean, I've never seen such a robust comment section as people that love Seiko as well as people that hate Seiko for various reasons. And man, this just the wear profile on here, a little bit rounder, more organic, but maybe sits a little high here. Going to be a little bit more low slung, a little bit more evenly distributed in terms of the visual weight there between the proud crystal, the bezel, as well as the case back and that beautifully thin mid case. So very, very nice. But with that said, let's actually get these off the wrist, set for some loom shots, the light transition, and closing thoughts. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the lights here. Yes, one is a dive watch, and one is an everyday adventure luxury watch. And yeah, the dive watch is glowing. They both have strong loom, just one, of course, has more applied. And it's a volume game and not necessarily a design game, and less of an execution game, at least when it comes to these compounds. But one thing I always like to work in is going to be a bit of a low light transition, because you're not always going to be out in the middle of a field enjoying direct sunlight. A lot of times you're going to find yourself coming down to buildings, walking underneath overhangs, or just hanging out underneath the shade of a tree. So it's nice to see what these colors, textures, and finishes render like in less than optimal lighting. And my goodness, guys, both of them have a play with light. Both of them do have sunray dials, one being a little bit more faint and subtle there on that frosted white dial versus this beautiful inky sunray blue, but it's a deep blue. It's their corporate Grand Seiko blue, and I love it for that. So these are both watches that I could just drool over day after day. But I will say that when it comes to what makes it on my wrist, both of these watches make an amazing case for themselves. And as an owner of both, I feel like it's nice to be able to share some of those thoughts with you, because I do own quite a few other watches, some of them being more expensive, some of them being a bit more prestigious, some of them being a bit more innovative, right? So there's just a lot of reasons why, especially as somebody who's on YouTube, why you might neglect watches like these. But I will say that they do absolutely find their way on to my wrists. So I'm going to go ahead and get the lights back on. Yes, so apart from being quite wearable and enjoyable, guys, these are watches that really resonate with me. Well, of course, I've traveled with the beautiful Grand Seiko Traveler GMT, but I have also worn this office collar to the office, and I have kept track of things like East Coast time. So they're both, again, quite useful. Different use cases, really, and then it just goes into the end of the day, they're two different demographics. As much as we would love to think that people who are Grand Seiko fans all graduated up from Seiko, that's just not the case. And it's really not how it works. As you guys have probably noticed, there's a lot of folks that started out with Seiko who don't want to grow with the brand and don't want to necessarily get into some of their higher level offerings because they're so pleased with their more entry level options. So with that said, guys, these are just two peas in a pod that I enjoy quite a lot. But let me know what you think down in the comments below. If you like the video, please do like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.